Welcome, wanderers of the shadowed paths, to another descent into the throne of nightmares. I am your guide through the veiled corridors of history's most forsaken tales, where the echoes of the damned refuse to fade. Tonight, we gather around the flickering embers of a story long buried beneath the weight of silence and soil, a narrative that claws its way from the grave of America's hidden heartlands. Prepare yourselves, for we delve into America's closest kept siblings, the dark curse of a forgotten village. Imagine, if you will, a mist-shrouded valley nestled deep within the jagged spine of the Appalachian Mountains, where the trees twist like tormented souls and the rivers run black with unspoken sins. This is Eldridge Hollow, a place erased from maps, whispered only in the dying breaths of those who dared to remember. Founded in the fevered dawn of colonial America, it was once a beacon of Puritan zeal, a hamlet where families sought refuge from the world's wickedness. But refuge turned to prison, and purity twisted into perversion. At the core of this curse lies a bloodline so entangled, so inseparably bound, that the very notion of separation invites horrors beyond comprehension. Picture the siblings Elias and Elara Thorne, the last guardians of a lineage cursed to cling together in ways that defy nature's laws. Born of a family where brothers wed sisters, where the veil between kin and lover was rent asunder by an ancient malediction, their story is not one of mere tragedy, but of a darkness that seeps into the bones, a curse that whispers promises of eternity while devouring the soul. As the fog rolls in from the hollow's depths, carrying the faint scent of decay and forbidden incense, we must ask ourselves, what happens when blood calls to blood, not in love, but in damnation? Let me draw you closer, dear listener. Feel the chill as the night air thickens, heavy with the residue of secrets long guarded. Eldridge Hollow was not always a ghost. In the 1690s, amid the hysteria of Salem's witch hunts, a group of settlers fled northward, seeking solace in the untamed wilderness. Led by Reverend Josiah Thorne, a man whose eyes burned with the fire of divine righteousness, they carved out a village from the unforgiving earth. But the land they claimed was not empty. It harbored spirits older than the colonies, entities woven into the roots of the mountains themselves, native guardians, perhaps, or something far more primordial. The curse began with a betrayal. Josiah, in his zeal, accused a local healer, a woman of mixed heritage, blending Algonquin lore with European alchemy, of consorting with the devil. She was burned at the stake, her screams echoing through the hollow like a prophecy. But as the flames consumed her, she uttered words that sealed the village's fate. Your blood shall bind you, closer than flesh allows. Siblings shall become one, or the hollow shall claim you all. From that day, the Thorns, and those tied to them, found their families fracturing in unnatural ways. Children born of unions outside the bloodline withered and died, while those who turned inward prospered, in body if not in spirit. Yet prosperity came at a price. Whispers of madness spread. Villagers spoke of shadows that moved with human grace, of cries in the night that mimicked lovers' sighs twisted into agony. Families vanished, one by one, leaving behind homes where furniture gathered dust like shrouds, and mirrors reflected faces not quite their own. By the 1800s, Eldridge Hollow was a spectre, its name struck from records, its paths overgrown with thorns that seemed to bleed when cut. Now, fast forward to the present, or rather, to the tales that trickle out from hikers who stray too far, or genealogists who unearth forbidden branches in family trees, stories of Elias and Elara, twins born in the 1920s to a thorn line that had dwindled to echoes. Raised in isolation within the crumbling manor at the hollow's heart, they were taught that the world beyond was poison, that only in each other's arms could the curse be appeased. But appeasement bred abomination. Their union, forced by the spectral hand of their ancestors, birthed things that slithered in the dark, entities that hungered for the light of life. Why does this tale grip us so? Because it taps into the primal fear of the familiar turned foul, the sibling bond, meant to be a sanctuary, corrupted into a cage. As we embark on this journey, feel the weight of eyes upon you, watching from the periphery of your vision. The curse of Eldridge Hollow does not rest easy. It seeks new vessels, new blood to bind. Let the shadows lengthen as we step into the narrative proper. The air grows colder, the wind carries faint murmurs, names, pleas, warnings. Hold fast, for the story unfolds like a shroud unwrapping a corpse long interred. In the pages of forgotten diaries and the cracks of weathered stone, the truth awaits, eager to ensnare. But first, envision the hollow at dusk. The sun dips below the ridgeline, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red, as if the heavens themselves bleed for what's to come. Birds fall silent, their songs choked by an invisible hand. In the distance, the outline of the thorn manor looms, its windows like empty sockets staring into your soul. This is where it begins, the cradle of the curse, the womb of nightmares. As host of this macabre symposium, I urge you to dim the lights, for light invites revelation, and some revelations are better left in the dark. Yet curiosity, that insidious temptress, draws us onward. What secrets lie in the blood of the thorns? What horrors were born of their closest kept union? The answers slither forth, wrapped in fog and fury, and so we begin our descent. The path winds narrow, the underbrush clutches at your ankles like skeletal fingers. Breathe deep the scent of damp earth and decay. It's the perfume of the damned. Welcome to Eldridge Hollow, where siblings are not parted, even in death. Now let us immerse ourselves in the tale, thread by thread, as if weaving a tapestry from the sinews of the lost. Our story commences in the autumn of 1923, when the leaves of Eldridge Hollow turned not to gold, but to a sickly crimson, as though the trees wept blood for the sins below. Elias Thorne was born first, emerging into the world with a cry that shattered the silence of the manor like glass underfoot. Mere minutes later came Elara, her tiny hand clutching at her brother's heel, as if even in the womb she feared separation. Their parents, Silas and Miriam Thorne, brother and sister themselves, bound by the curse's inexorable pull, gazed upon their offspring with a mixture of reverence and dread. The manor, a sprawling edifice of weathered oak and stone, stood sentinel at the hollow's nadir, its foundations sunk deep into soil tainted by centuries of ritual and regret. The house itself was a character in this grim play, its halls echoing with the ghosts of prior generations. Portraits lined the walls, depicting Thorns of yore, stern-faced men with eyes like polished obsidian, women whose smiles hid fangs of sorrow. The air within was perpetually chill, redolent of mothballs and mildew, with an undercurrent of something metallic, blood, perhaps, or the tang of tears long dried. Silas, a gaunt figure with hair like raven's wings streaked with premature grey, was the village's reluctant patriarch. Eldridge Hollow, by then, was little more than a cluster of dilapidated cabins circling the manor like supplicants around an altar. The few remaining families, descendants of the original settlers, clung to existence through subsistence farming and furtive trades, their bloodlines interwoven with the Thorns through marriages that skirted the edges of taboo. But Silas knew the truth. The curse demanded purity, an inward turning that repelled outsiders like oil from water. Remember, he would whisper to his children as they huddled by the hearth, flames casting elongated shadows that danced like demons. The world beyond these hills is a maw waiting to devour. Only here, in our blood, lies salvation. Miriam, her face a map of faint scars from childhood fevers induced by the curse's whims, nodded solemnly, her hands trembling as she stitched garments from fabric woven in the village's lone loom. Elias and Elara grew amid this isolation, their world bounded by the dense forest that encircled the hollow. The woods were alive with peril, twisted roots that tripped the unwary, thorns that drew blood with hungry precision, and whispers, oh, the whispers, that slithered through the undergrowth like serpents. As toddlers, the siblings played in the manor's overgrown garden, where roses bloomed black and petals fell like ashes. Elias, with his mop of dark curls and piercing blue eyes, was the protector, always shielding Elara from imagined threats. She, fairer of skin with hair like spun moonlight, clung to him with a devotion that bordered on worship. But even in innocence, the curse stirred. At age 7, during a storm that lashed the hollow with rain like divine wrath, Elias fell ill. Fever racked his body, his skin burning as if the healer's ancient fire had reignited within. Miriam, desperate, consulted the family's grimoire, a leather-bound tome passed down from Josiah, its pages yellowed and inscribed with incantations blending scripture and sorcery. "The bond must strengthen," she murmured, pressing Elara's hand to her brother's brow. As thunder roared, Elara felt a surge, a warmth flowing from her to him, knitting his flesh anew. Elias recovered, but from that day they shared dreams, visions of a burning stake, a woman's laughter turning to screams, and a command echoing eternally, "Bind closer." By adolescence, the siblings' closeness deepened into something unspoken, a gravity that pulled them inexorably together. The village elders, wizened figures like old Hester Grange, whose lineage traced back to the accused healer's kin, watched with knowing eyes. The curse awakens. Hester would croak over her pipe, smoke curling like spectres. The hollow's inhabitants numbered fewer than 50, their faces etched with the same pallor, their conversations laced with omens. Strange events plagued them: livestock found drained of blood, crops blighted overnight, and shadows that lingered too long in doorways. One fateful evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Elias and Elara ventured deeper into the woods than ever before. The air grew thick, scented with pine and something feral, musk of hidden beasts. They discovered a clearing ringed by stones etched with runes that glowed faintly under the moon's gaze. At its center stood the remnants of the stake where the healer had burned, charred wood defying time's erosion. As they approached, a wind arose, carrying voices, blood to blood, flesh to flesh, or the hollow claims the rest. Elara trembled, her hand slipping into Elias's. "What does it mean?" she whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the gathering dark. Elias, feeling a fire ignite in his veins, pulled her close. "It means we are one," he replied, his breath warm against her ear. In that moment, the curse sealed its grip. A vision assailed them both. Generations of thorns, siblings entwined in rites that blurred love and horror, birthing children who carried the mark. Eyes that shifted color, skin that whispered secrets when touched. Returning home, they found Silas waiting, his face ashen. "You felt it," he said. Not a question, but a condemnation. That night, over a supper of meager bread and venison stewed in herbs that numbed the tongue, he revealed fragments of the family lore. The healer, named Ayana, had been no witch but a guardian of the land's spirits. Josiah's betrayal invoked a curse not of vengeance, but of ironic preservation. To survive, the bloodline must remain undiluted, siblings uniting to appease the spirit's hunger for purity. But each union fed the darkness, spawning entities, half-human shades, that lurked in the hollow's fringes, waiting to reclaim wayward souls. As the years unfolded, Elias took up the mantle of provider, hunting in the woods with a rifle carved from cursed oak. His shots echoed like thunderclaps, felling deer whose eyes mirrored his own turmoil. Elara tended the garden, coaxing life from soil that resisted, her fingers stained with earth that felt alive under her nails. Their bond grew, laced with stolen glances and touches that lingered too long, the curse's whisper urging them toward the inevitable. Tension mounted when an outsider breached the hollow's veil. In 1935, a wanderer named Harlan Crow stumbled upon the village, drawn by rumors of hidden gold from colonial times. Tall and rugged, with a voice like gravel under boots, he sought shelter from a brewing storm. The villagers, wary, directed him to the manor. Silas, sensing danger, welcomed him with feigned hospitality, but Elara's eyes met Harlan's, sparking a forbidden curiosity. Elias felt it like a knife twist. He must not stay. He growled to his sister as they lay awake in adjacent rooms, walls thin as parchment. The curse stirred jealousy, manifesting in nightmares where Harlan's face melted into Ayana's, accusing, "Break the bond and perish." The storm raged, lightning illuminating the manor in stark flashes. Harlan shared tales of the wider world, cities of steel, wars brewing across oceans. His words a siren call to Elara's caged spirit. But as midnight tolled from the manor's decrepit clock, shadows coalesced in the guest chamber. Harlan awoke to hands, cold, ethereal, clutching his throat. He fled into the night, screaming of ghost siblings entwined in the dark. Word of his escape never reached beyond the hollow. The woods claimed him, his bones later found picked clean by unseen predators, yet his intrusion cracked the facade. Elias and Ella, now in their teens, confronted the curse's demand. In the manor's attic, amid dust-choked relics, they discovered letters from past thorns, confessions of unions consummated under duress, births of children who howled like wolves, and vanishings when the bond weakened. The narrative builds, dear listener, like pressure in a sealed tomb. Feel the air grow heavier, the scent of impending doom. Rain-soaked earth, flickering candle wax, and the faint copper of blood. Elias and Ella stand on the precipice, the hollows more yawning below. As the curse's tendrils tighten, the tale descends into deeper abysses, where the line between love and lunacy blurs like ink in water. By the 1940s, Eldridge Hollow teetered on oblivion's edge, its population halved by mysterious ailments, fevers that burned from within, madness that drove folk to wander the woods, never to return. Elias and Ella, now in their 20s, had succumbed to the inevitable. Their union, performed in the clearing under a blood moon, was no joyous rite but a somber sacrament. The villagers gathered, faces masked in shadow, chanting incantations from the grimoire. Silas officiated, his voice cracking like dry branches. In blood united, the spirits sated. As Elias and Ella entwined, the wind howled, carrying Ayana's laughter, and the ground trembled as if the earth itself recoiled. From this bond came their first child, a boy named Abel. But Abel was marked, his eyes flickered from blue to black, and at night he whispered in tongues unknown. The manor echoed with his cries, not of hunger but of ancient grievances. Ella, cradling him, felt the curse's weight, a cold chain around her heart. "He's ours," Elias murmured, but his voice held doubt, for Abel's skin bore faint patterns, like runes etched by invisible hands. Conflicts arose as the outside world encroached. World War II's echoes reached even the hollow, with draft notices fluttering in like ill omens. Elias, deemed unfit due to familial anomalies, noted by a rare visiting doctor, seethed with resentment. The doctor, a curious soul named Dr. Elias Hawthorne, no relation, or so he claimed, had been summoned for a village outbreak. He observed the thorns with clinical detachment, noting in his journal, later discovered in abandoned archives, the peculiar endogamy that bred genetic aberrations. Hawthorne's presence ignited turmoil. He spoke to Ella in private, his words dripping honeyed concerns. "This isolation, it's poisoning you all." For a moment, Ella dreamed of escape, of cities where siblings were merely kin, not destinies. But the curse retaliated. That night, as Hawthorne slept, shades materialized, translucent forms of past Thorne siblings, their faces contorted in eternal embrace. They whispered temptations, then terrors. Driving him mad, he fled, babbling of incestuous specters, his car veering into a ravine. The hollow claimed another. Abel's growth brought haunting events. At age 5, he vanished for days, found in the clearing, surrounded by animal carcasses arranged in spirals. "They told me to," he said, pointing to empty air. Elias and Ella argued fiercely, Elias insisting on stricter rites, Ella pleading for mercy. Their love, once a refuge, soared into obsession, each touch laced with fear. The village unraveled. Hester Grange, the elder, succumbed to visions, clawing at her eyes to unsee the bound ones. Families fled, but the woods repelled them. Paths looped endlessly. Thorns drew blood that summoned swarms of insects with human-like screams. Those who escaped returned changed, muttering of siblings in the mist who beckoned them back. In 1952, tragedy peaked. Ella bore twins girls, Lydia and Leora, but labor was agony, the curse demanding sacrifice. Silas, aged and frail, offered himself, slashing his wrists in the manor's basement altar. His blood pooled, forming shapes that mirrored the runes. The twins emerged healthy, but Miriam followed Silas soon after, her heart failing under grief's burden. Now sole guardians, Elias and Ella raised their brood in paranoia. The manor-decayed walls wept moisture that smelled of salt tears. Floors creaked with unseen footsteps. Nightly, the family performed rituals, circling the grimoire, reciting Ayana's words backward to appease. But the shades grew bolder, manifesting as doppelgangers: Elias seeing Elara's face on Abel, Elara feeling phantom caresses from spectral kin. A chilling climax brewed in 1960. Abel, now a teen, rebelled, enamored with radio tales of the outside. He attempted escape, luring Lydia with promises of freedom. They fled at dawn, but the curse awakened fully. Fog engulfed the hollow, voices chanting, "Bind or break." Elias and Elara pursued, hearts pounding like war drums. In the woods, they found Abel and Lydia entwined, not in flight, but in mimicry of the curse, compelled by invisible forces. Horror struck. The shades had possessed them, forcing the bond to perpetuate. A struggle ensued, Elias wrestling Abel, Elara pulling Lydia free. But Abel, in frenzy, struck Elias with a branch, drawing blood. The scent summoned the entities, monstrous births from prior unions, slithering from shadows with limbs like twisted vines, eyes glowing with ancestral rage. The family fled back to the manor, barricading doors as the creatures besieged, windows shattered, glass raining like icy daggers. Inside, revelations poured. Abel confessed visions of Ayana, urging breakage of the cycle through sacrifice. "One must die to free the rest," he wailed. In desperation, Elara offered herself, but Elias refused. Instead, they turned to the grimoire's forbidden rite emerging, where siblings as souls fused, appeasing the curse eternally. As the creatures breached, Elias and Elara embraced, chanting. Light erupted, blinding, and when it faded, the assailants dissolved. But Abel, Lydia, and Leora watched in terror as their parents' forms blurred, becoming one ethereal being, a closest kept sibling entity, bound forever. The hollow fell silent, but the curse lingered. The children, now cursed anew, perpetuated the cycle, their unions birthing further horrors. Villagers whispered of lights in the woods, cries of ecstasy and agony intermingled. As our narrative crests this wave of dread, feel the chill seep deeper, the air thick with the residue of fractured bonds. The Thorn's tale is a mirror to our own hidden darknesses, reflecting what happens when closeness curdles into curse. To fully grasp the chill that permeates Eldridge Hollow's curse, we must unearth the roots from which it sprouts, blending the soil of real American history with the vines of folklore, creating a tangled web that feels unnervingly authentic. This is no mere fiction, it's an echo of the nation's shadowed past, where zealotry, isolation, and the clash of cultures birthed monstrosities that still haunt the collective psyche. Let us journey back to the late 17th century, the era of colonial fervor. The Salem witch trials of 1692-1693 stand as a cornerstone, a frenzy where over 200 were accused, 20 executed, and fear spread like plague. But Eldridge Hollow's tale draws from lesser-known offshoots, settlements fleeing Salem's madness, seeking purity in wilderness. Historical records, such as those in the Massachusetts Bay Colony archives, note groups like the Northward Pilgrims, who vanished into the Appalachians, their fates undocumented. Josiah Thorne mirrors figures like Cotton Mather, whose writings fueled hysteria, but with a twist, blending Puritanism with encounters of indigenous peoples. The Appalachians themselves are a cauldron of cultural collisions. Pre-colonial, the region was home to Cherokee, Shawnee, and Algonquin tribes, whose lore spoke of spirits guarding the land, entities like the Great Serpent, or forest walkers, beings that punished desecration. Ayana, the healer in our story, embodies this, a fictional composite of real figures like the medicine women, documented in early explorer journals, such as those of John Lederer in 1670, who described herbalists blending native and European knowledge. Her curse echoes native curses in folklore, like the Cherokee, Nani, immortals who tricked intruders, or Algonquin Wendigo tales, where isolation breeds cannibalistic madness, symbolic of cultural erasure. By the 18th century, as America forged its identity, isolated hamlets like Eldridge proliferated. The lost colonies phenomenon, Roanoke's vanishing in 1587, or Jamestown's early struggles, fuels the forgotten village motif. Historical demographers note ghost towns in Appalachia, abandoned due to economic failure or epidemics, but folklore adds layers. Tales from Foxfire oral histories collected 1960s-70s speak of an hollows where families practiced close-kin marrying to preserve land and secrets, leading to genetic isolation and myths of deformed young guns. The curse's theme of endogamy ties to real cultural traumas. In Appalachian history, poverty and geography fostered inbreeding, as documented in studies like the 1912 Kallikak family by Henry Goddard. Though debunked as eugenics pseudoscience, it influenced perceptions. Folklore amplifies this. Stories from West Virginia's Mothman region or Kentucky's Bell Witch, c. 1817-1821, involve familial curses, where siblings are tormented by spirits for blood sins. The Bell Witch, a poltergeist afflicting the Bell family, included sibling rivalries and deaths, blending fact-recorded affidavits with legendary shape-shifting entities. Culturally, America's Puritan legacy instilled a fear of the other, leading to insularity. The Great Awakening 1730s-40s revived zeal, with preachers like Jonathan Edwards warning of sins of the flesh in isolated communities. Eldridge's rituals mirror Shaker communes or Amish endogamy, but darkened Shakers abstained, while our curse enforces union, echoing forbidden biblical tales like Lot's daughters as Genesis 19, twisted into American Gothic. Moving to the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution bypassed Appalachia, fostering moonshine clans and feuds. Hatfield's McCoy's 1860s-90s, where blood ties were sacred, vendettas eternal. Folklore from this era includes raw head and bloody bones, child eaters punishing wayward kin, or Bugus, the boogeyman in hollows guarding cursed bloodlines. The 20th century brings modernity's intrusion, mirroring our narrative. During the Great Depression, WPA folklore projects collected tales of vanishing villages, like those in Tennessee's Smokies, displaced for national parks, their residents whispering of curses. Debuta drafts exposed isolates, as in reports of folk with webbed toes or extra fingers, genetic markers mythologized as curses. Culturally, this ties to broader American fears that nuclear family ideal clashing with hidden dysfunctions, as in literature like Faulkner's Azaladeen and 1930, where familial bonds rot inwardly, or Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, 1948, where tradition demands sacrifice. Eldridge echoes these, blending with horror folklore like H.P. Lovecraft's The Shadow over Innsmouth, 1931, where inbred towns harbor eldritch secrets. Eerily real cursed families exist in lore, the Kennedy curse of tragedies, or the Romanovs' hemophilia as divine punishment. In Appalachia, the blue Fugates, 1800s, 1960s, had blue skin from inbreeding, inspiring tales of marked bloodlines. Blending fact and folklore creates authenticity. Ayana's curse parallels Native American skinwalker legends, shape-shifters born of taboo acts like sibling incest, a taboo in many tribes. Educational yet eerie, this context reveals how America's history, conquest, isolation, purity obsessions, breeds curses that linger, whispering in the wind of forgotten hollows. As we peel these layers, the air grows denser with the dust of ages, the scent of old tomes and smoldering stakes. The past is not dead, it binds us, closer than we dare admit. Beneath the surface of Eldridge Hollow's curse lies a labyrinth of symbolic and psychological depths, a mirror reflecting humanity's darkest recesses. This tale is no mere ghost story. It's a dissection of universal fears, cultural traumas, and the shadowed facets of human nature, delivered in an ominous tone that invites introspection amid the chill. Symbolically, the closest-kept siblings embody the perversion of intimacy. Sibling bonds, in psychology, Freud's family romance, represent primal security, but the curse twists this into Oedipal horror. Incest as both salvation and damnation. Elias and Elara's union symbolizes the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its tail, a cycle of self-consumption where purity leads to decay. The hollow itself is a womb tomb, enclosing and suffocating, echoing Jung's anima animus archetypes, siblings as incomplete halves fusing monstrously. Psychologically, the story taps into isolation's madness. Erik Erikson's stages of development highlight identity formation through separation, but the curse enforces fusion, breeding identity diffusion, seen in Abel's rebellion, a cry against enmeshment. This mirrors real, enmeshed families, in therapy literature, where boundaries blur, fostering codependency and pathology. The shades, manifestations of repressed guilt, align with Freud's uncanny the familiar made strange, evoking dread when kin becomes other. Thematically, it connects to universal fears of inheritance, genetic curses like hereditary diseases, e.g., Huntington's, where blood betrays. In a broader sense, it's cultural trauma, America's original sin of colonialism, where conquering land invokes retribution. Ayana's curse symbolizes indigenous vengeance, a post-colonial haunting where the oppressed bind the oppressors in their own taboos. This echoes Toni Morrison's Beloved, 1987, where slavery's ghosts demand reckoning through familial bonds. Human nature's duality shines through love as possession, closeness as cage. Philosophically, it recalls Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. The thorns doomed to repeat unions, questioning free will amid fate. The curse's demand for purity critiques eugenics' dark history, where blood purity justified atrocities, from Nazi ideology to American sterilization laws 1920s-70s. Ominously, it probes societal insularity in an era of echo chambers. The Hollow warns of inward-turning breeding monsters. Connect to modern fears, genetic editing, Caraspa tempting perfect bloodlines, or pandemics isolating families into pressure cookers of dysfunction. Intellectually, the narrative explores folklore's role in processing trauma. Curses as metaphors for generational abuse, where siblings inherit not wealth but wounds. In cultural anthropology, rites like those in Eldridge mimic liminal phases of Victor Turner, where unions transcend norms, but here liminality traps, birthing abominations. The ominous tone underscores we all carry curses, ancestral baggage, societal pressures, forcing unnatural closeness. What if your sibling's gaze held eternity's weight? This story haunts because it whispers. The closest bonds can be the most cursed, binding us to shadows we dare not face. As the embers of our tale dim, leaving only the afterglow of dread, we emerge from Eldridge Hollow's depths, forever marked by its chill. The curse of the closest kept siblings lingers, a spectral hand upon the shoulder, reminding us that some bonds defy the grave. Summarizing the horror from Josiah's betrayal to Elias and Elara's fusion, the narrative weaves a shroud of inevitable doom. The village, now a whisper in the wind, claims souls who stray, its curse perpetuating through blood that refuses dilution. Abel Lydia Lyora, the cycle renews, birthing new nightmares in the manor's ruins. Yet, a lingering question haunts, is the curse real or a manifestation of human frailty? In the quiet of your room, listen. Does blood call to you, urging closeness that borders the abyss? Dear listener, as Throne of Nightmares fades, carry this echo. In the dark, siblings wait, bound eternally. Sleep uneasy, the hollow beckons.